Priscilla and I are here. Richard may join us. And Susan is just taking some minutes. Richard's here recording as a member of the public. He records most of our meetings as he can under FOI. So again, thank you all for coming. Great turnout of state officials. Thank Maria for helping pull this together, and thank Charlie for coming down from North Canaan. They have issues up there, and I just thought maybe I could just take a minute just to set what we're thinking of or what the history has been, because I don't know if you all have how much you know or where we're at with the process. But I guess I can start, and I said I don't want to cut anybody off.
Sure, go ahead.
But again, thank everybody for coming, because it's great to get everybody around the table and start talking about solutions to what has been an ongoing problem that sort of goes back. And this is Richard Bramley, another selectman from Cornwall. Yeah,
Thank you.
See them all.
Hi, Eric Bergeron, DOT.
But this is
How you doing?
Good.
Charlie
from North Canaan.
from North Canaan.
Right.
Yeah. So this is really been going on since 2015, since the railroad subcontracted or contracted out someone to spray the sides of the tracks, and there was a lot of correspondence, of which this is some of the summary, couple of summary sheets and we have plenty of information about that. We even have a video of the damage that was done at the time that shows, especially the pine trees, having a significant impact of the spray program that was put on at that time. We did have good conversations with the railroad at that time, and we got the information from their subcontractor saying what they sprayed at the time. It was a mixture of different chemicals. And then we've had state legislation passed to say there has to be vegetation management programs. We did get a plan in 2018. We did not receive one in 2019. When we got the one in 2018, we did write back to the railroad saying that the trees that have been killed on the sides of the tracks are a concern of ours because they're large, and what I hope to do is go down to the particular couple areas that have been impacted in West Cornwall and look at them, because they are clear and present danger right now, because these are very tall trees and they're dead. And the videos that we shot in 2015 showed immediate damage, and now that damage has spread onto the trees and has killed them. And I know that because I did have someone look at the trees who's a professional arborist, and he did a long detailed analysis of the chemicals that were used. And this summer he wrote up a report for us, which I sent out to our state representatives, to the railroad, and to DOT, clearly saying that the herbicide that was applied in 2014 killed the trees down there. So that's a copy of his report, and he basically said that there were additives put into the chemicals which penetrated the bark of the trees. This is what is used to kill any kind of woody plants. So that's these are all copies of his summary pages. This report goes on for 64 pages. And then here's a copy of the press that came out on this. And then Charlie,
It's the same thing. Right?
Yeah, I think it's
the same thing. There's duplicate copies, and we can certainly give you the whole report if you wish the whole report. But his mind, he used to run the Arboretum for years for Harvard University, and he goes all over the world consulting about trees. In his mind, it's a very clear connection between the spraying that was done, the chemicals that we used, and the dead trees. So we got some reports in the papers about this. Charlie reads the paper, and concurrent with getting the report from the arborist, there was another round of spraying that happened late this August. And again, significant damage was done to trees, not on the scale that we saw in 2014-15, but in other areas. Down at Cornwall Bridge, there were tall trees that were had impact on the leaves, and I understand from Charlie there were areas that had been previously unsprayed that were hit. And again, I have no problem with maintaining the tracks, as we said before the meeting. I have been on record for a long time supporting rail traffic, getting the trucks off the road, giving transportation to our necessary industries up here. I'm all in favor. I've also come out at the time when they considered doing passenger service up here. I was a supporter of that, but if we can't even cut brush properly, then I really wonder what's going on. And I have, again, I'd like to, and keeping the trains on the track and not in the river, not having derailments, and I appreciate your guys' efforts to keep the tracks workable and repaired the best you can with limited resources is a very big priority for the town too. And I have no problem keeping and applying herbicide along the track area, but killing trees that are way off the tracks, especially some of the ones we'll see today are on people's property. I just don't understand why that's part of the plan, why we even have to be meeting on this issue, because again, I have no problem with keeping the tracks clear, but killing vegetation way off the tracks, and if the trees need to come down, they should be cut down and not killed and then haphazardly fall on the tracks when the time comes. I mean, it just seems like something, there was a mistake here, and now we've gotten to the point this winter that these trees are dead and they're going to fall either in the river, on the tracks, on town roads or whatever, but they have been defined as hazard trees by our tree warden, and they need to be, simple. I mean, there seems to be two issues. One is the ongoing spray program. We need to have the vegetation management program for 2019. We need to limit the spraying to the rail bed, the track area, not go into residential areas, or it seems like that would be a sensible thing. And then, but the immediate thing is dealing with some of these trees that are dead. So we got the ongoing spray program, and we've got the damage that has been done over a number of years, and that's sort of where I think we're at. And I didn't know whether Charlie had any North Canaan stuff, and I thought what we could do is we'd like to go down to West Cornwall and look at this couple particular areas to see whether we can't get a work program in place for this fall. Would be my goal.
Up in North Canaan, we had the spraying going on. We had a tree that was sprayed right by our Canaan Railroad Station. Was big bone contention 2 years ago. It was sprayed, and it was a tree that we saved from the renovation, and it was a honey locust, and it's been there for 15 years, and it got hit pretty good. But from act of miracle, a lot of miracle grow or whatever, it came back. I have no idea how, but it came back. But knowing this year, right out behind McDonald's, right on Route 44, we got 3 beautiful white spruce trees that are all brown from the spraying, which you see by this here. Downtown in the center of town, I had a resident complain to me, so I had him write a letter that they came by and sprayed over top of tank cars up 15, 20 feet high. Below it is all nice and green. So I had no idea why they sprayed so high. If you go up on Route 7, Route 7A, look north to Massachusetts, there's no spraying being done there. They use a brush hog to cut the brush. You look south on 7 on the Connecticut side, and it's all brown. So the state of Massachusetts, they do not spray there. They do cutting. We've seen it on their car. They come by with a big arm, like we do our roadsides. They do that. So, but again, if you went up on Route 7A and look north and south, you'll see the big difference. It is a problem. We don't have the extent of problem that Cornwall has, but I noticed a lot of trees that are high. And again, down below, it's still as green as right now. So those trees are eventually going to die, and we probably end up having the same problem as what Cornwall's going to have. And we have the guy saw it shooting right over the tank cars, shooting high, right in the center of town, right in the dead center of town. They were doing this. So a lot of people are complaining what's going to get into the aquifer. We have AquaTurf right there. We have town water supply, and they have low-yielding wells. So that's our concern on that, and glad that you're out here, Maria, for doing this. And I think Maria took some pictures of it on the railroad tracks, right behind McDonald's, right dead center in town. And it's not only there, right by the railroad station. It's a sad sight to see. My concern is, Massachusetts, they don't do it, but they can cut brush, but why can't they do it in Connecticut? Because the equipment's coming from the Connecticut side, where we store it in our yard, right, where they store it by the golf course, where all their equipment is stored by. It's a kind of grill. So that's our speech.
And also, of course, the river is right on the other side of these trees, so we're concerned about, again, it seems pretty haphazard application of pretty heavy-duty chemicals there, right next to a river, which a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to keep. It's one of the biggest assets of this area. And as Charlie said, the Appalachian Trail is right up here, and to have this brown belt right through the middle of the Green Valley just doesn't, it seems unnecessary.
And also we have Robert Swamp, where the trees go right through and you can see it, it's brown on both sides, right through that area. And everything, so it is definitely a concern.
Okay. So our intent was to have the railroad here and even further. As I was explaining earlier, they were not able to attend today, but they have committed to attend by the end of the month. My contact there is a lawyer for the railroad. And he said, I could come, but if you're going to get into technical details, he goes, I really can't answer those questions. What he wants is to have their chief engineer and the president of the railroad in attendance. And then yesterday he called me and offered further. He says, really what we really need to do is get a representative from the vendor here, that can answer these specific questions about the type of chemicals, the spray pattern, what's appropriate for this type of railroad. The vendor they use is a pretty common vendor. They operate as far as like Ohio and through the whole Northeast. Spraying for vegetation control is very, very common on railroads. And when you look at the equipment, it goes down the railroad and it leaves this cloud pattern around it. And it's meant to contain, the pressure of the nozzle and the spray pattern and all that stuff is meant to contain it in that sort of cloud pattern. And if you think about a standard rail bed, you got your ties and you got your running rail, right? And then you got the ballast comes down and it goes down to a ditch. That's in a perfect world, right? And it's meant to clear that, okay? And what it's really designed to do is to keep the vegetation out of the ballast, because if you get vegetation that grows up in the ballast, and as you mentioned, it follows the ballast, it destabilizes the track bed, and then you have more problems. I gotta tell you, I don't know, maybe John, doing brush clearing alone without spraying?
They have a 3-year program. They do spray, but they do have brush cutters.
Right, but they have to spray to keep the vegetation off the ballast, right? Right, and so...
Usually a pre-emergent and a post. The second time around is a growth accelerant that they put on it to, like you said, turns everything brown fast.
See, but what the difference here is, if you've got a really good tree clearing program, then that corridor, right, from, remember we're talking about the running rail that ties down the ballast, right, is clear of vegetation. When you look at this, right, and you see that you're coming in on going down the track and this thing's blowing well, yeah, that tree's going to get hit and that tree's going to get hit, but the point is that that tree and that tree should be the right of way should be more clear of vegetation, and then that, but I think we really need to have the railroad and the vendor really get into the specifics about how that equipment's set up and what the spray patterns are. And this is not a guy in the back of the truck with a hose. I mean, this thing is specifically designed to do that type of work. And I think that they could probably better answer questions about, because this is not, I'm sure this is not the first time that they've dealt with this, in other parts of the country, to talk about what's appropriate for this corridor, or is it, should we be going through their spraying before we do some tree clearing in advance, or something to that effect. If there's trees that are damaged that are on the right of way, then they should be taken down, yeah, absolutely. But I think we've got to get them here to talk about your specific concerns about the type of chemicals to spray pattern and how that operation works and what's appropriate.
Could I just ask mechanically, when you say, talk about this thing and how it's supposed to work, it seems to be a little bit of contrast with what sort of people who witnessed it, who did sound like they saw a guy in the back like spraying it with no mask or anything like that.
Right.
Ideally, is it supposed to be, I mean, when there's a lot of precision in the description of how the cloud is supposed to fall in the particular corridor. Is that because ideally the spray is coming out of one, is this like a
Not the equipment I've seen, John.
They have a tank truck.
Yeah.
It's looks like an oil truck. And on the back of it is a set of arms. There's an arm and it has down nozzles. There's two side wings that brings it out to the 20 foot. It's 10 foot from center of track. So you have two nozzles, two arms that come down. The outer nozzle has an outer spray pattern. So basically it covers 20 foot going down the tracks. They come to an area like you're talking about in the yard. Like you mentioned, one of the arms will kick up so they can clear a train, and they'll spray along under the train, and generally it'll go a distance. It's not too far, but they'll clear a yard, and then they'll come back. They have an off-track piece of equipment, so like a pickup truck with a little machine on the back of it, and they'll spray whatever they can't reach, like around CNS bungalows and things like that.
The point is it's supposed to be contained.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's restrictions on how windy it can be when they're spraying and
Wind,
all that
rain,
stuff.
all that affects it.
When they sprayed in August, and one question was, because we didn't get any vegetation management plan in 2019 that they're supposed to do on the new
Well,
law.
that's something that we can help audit and make sure that that's getting out.
And again, so we did write back, and we haven't heard anything back since August when we've been writing. But one report we did get from people in West Cornwall was, in effect, a guy who was on a tank with a nozzle just spraying down a respirator. So there was nothing about arms, and I guess my question that I asked.
It's probably the off-track
That's
guys
the
that you're
last-
talking about.
Maybe it was off, so my question was.
You ever see Chemlon come around?
What?
Ever see Chemlon or
Yeah.
True Green?
Right.
Same type of truck.
Somebody has the entire, with a wand.
Right.
But the question that I have not gotten an answer to was, who did the spraying in August? Was it the contractor, or was it their own in-house
No,
people?
it's a contractor.
It was a contractor, just doing the off-track stuff.
Right.
Because again, I have no problem with little nozzles going down and protecting the ballast, but it's the stuff that goes way off the ballast into the bushes is where we're having issues. And I'm glad you're here so you'll be able to see 4 years later what this has done. Because it's clearly, and again, I could dig out if I had time the right-of-way maps, but it seems like the damage is going even off the right-of-way at this point. So that's another issue, because it's going off the right-of-way, up the bank into trees that are over town roads. So, it's, I think that there's commonality here about keeping the ballast intact and all that good stuff, but we're out in the bushes is where we're having the issue.
So I guess the goal, because unfortunately, as you said, the railroad can't be here today, but we do want them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No,
I know we're all in agreement
yes.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we figure out the goal for today is to make sure that we can show DOT, exemplars at least of all the kinds of damage that we're talking about, so that you can understand exactly what's going on here, so that when we do get the railroad out here, we can have a really thorough conversation about,
Okay.
how it happened and what happened and what we can.
And another area we'll look at too, which is interesting, you have the rail track here, and then you have the ballast, and then you have a stone wall, and then you have trees on the other side of the stone wall, which are now impacted on people's property. So, do you normally get correspondence to the railroad? Do you want all the stuff we've been sending them as far as saying this is the impact, these are the problems? Or
I
you just
think
wanna see
that
it?
probably what makes the most sense is we'll go ahead and have a meeting with them. They can answer some of the specific procedural questions that you have about how the operation works, how it's supposed to work, what the target vegetation is, how far it's supposed to spread, all that stuff. And then follow up from there. I can have my staff accompany them on a high rail trip where they go and run the rail line up and down and kind of mark out, okay, here's trees that are a problem and target a plan to kind of clean up.
Good. Because again, you know, just for people that don't know, this is all also state property, which somebody, and some of it is on the edge of private property, so somebody's damaged a bunch of property, which needs to be cleaned up.
Well, it's, I
We'll-
mean,
we'll
it's
look
gonna
at
be,
that.
yeah, it's gonna be specific, you know, point by point. That's why I say you really need to have somebody do a full line inspection and gather all that data.
Have you gotten complaints from specific residents as to certain areas?
Oh, yeah, yeah, and we'll look at one in particular, where there's about 500 feet of trees that have been defoliated. And we can, when we meet next time, what I'd like to do is again, I wanted to make this productive and not get a big, we could have made a big, you know, people in West Cornwall are, and I'm sure North Canada are very concerned about the impact of this in residential areas. But there are people with specific issues, and I will invite anybody that has had an issue to the next meeting to say, yes, this is what's happened, and these are my things that I can, again, relay the public record of that documentation.
So do we want to go out to the?
Yeah, let's go down and take a look.
So how do you-
Yeah.
Should we just, is it close here? Are we following you or?
You can follow us, it's about 5 miles away,
Okay.
very scenic. And then
Yeah,
what we'll do is we'll go down 125 to 128, take a left on the tracks, go down River Road, and we'll pull over, and there's a couple of spots I'd like to look at.
Okay.
Okay.